Hi, this is Darlene Hodges, and this is the summary of my curriculum audit and alignment project. I looked at kindergarten mathematics. My selected school is Meadow Lane Elementary School. It serves pre-K through fourth grade, 640 students enrolled. It serves our Seymour Johnson Air Force Base here in Goldsboro, which is Wayne County Public Schools. So there are the 40% of the student body is military connected. It also houses our elementary community developmental school, which serves the most severe and profound students with disabilities. When compared to the district and the state, Meadow Lane's staff is has more years of experience. For the 2018-19 school year, Meadow Lane received a C, a grade of 67 on the North Carolina report card, and exceeded growth with an 86.7 score in growth. Here's a quick look at their historical performance as it relates to both their grade score and growth, and it looks like they maintain somewhere between in the 60s for performance, and for growth they have intermittent years of exceeding and meeting growth. Data often reveals a lot about organizations and the people that work with them. And this is one such time as we looked at the teacher working conditions question concerning the curriculum taught in the school is aligned to the North Carolina Standard Course of Study. We see that 100% of the school said that indeed it was, with 97% of the state, 97% of the district, and 97% of elementary schools stating that the curriculum taught is aligned with the North Carolina Standard Course of Study. This stood out to me because as we compare those perceptions to the actual outcomes for students for both meeting meeting the requirements for proficiency and career college and career readiness, we see that that is only about 60%. And so the reason this is stood out so much to me is that we know that according to the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, if we are implementing core practices with fidelity and we are implementing those best practices, then we really should it should be effective for 80% of our students. So the expectation then is that 80% of our students are grade level proficient at a minimum with core instruction alone. With a 96.1 overall score for satisfaction on the Teachers Working Conditions Survey in 2018, I think it is safe to say that the employees of Meadow Lane Elementary are very satisfied. In reviewing the Teacher Working Conditions Survey of 2018, I recommend that the school improvement team take a look at the questions and or responses related to professional development, particularly the ones listed here where the professional development score is less than or equal to 10% of the 96.1% that they got for the overall score. Overall, students at Meadow Lane Elementary School are growing. However, achievement gaps for between white, AIG, and military connected students and all other subgroups, as well as the school's overall achievement, indicate a further need for culturally responsive education practices. Here's the ESSA long-term goals for achievement. For Meadow Lane Elementary School for mathematics, and it is really in line with the previous graph that shows that overall students are increase the number or the percent of students who are college and career ready, scoring a 4 or 5 on the EOG, is increasing both overall and subgroups. It also illuminates the additional need for culturally responsive practices in that overall African American students and economically disadvantaged students are not achieving as much as white students. It is important to note also that for economically disadvantaged students, the school did not meet its goal for ambitious growth for the 2018-19 school year. So, what exactly does it mean to be college and career ready other than scoring a 4 or 5 on the EOG? According to North Carolina, it is that students show mastery of English language arts and mathematics, as well as a complete course academic preparation using the North Carolina Standard Course of Study. However, despite this very explicit definition of college and career readiness, oftentimes North Carolina schools struggle to make this realization for their students. In a report by Education Week, it actually ranked North Carolina as 37th out of 50 states in the District of Columbia for education. And in just about every definition of success that we have, it is based on end of grade testing. And testing grades, as we know, begin in third grade. And so, where a lot of intervention, a lot of pressure have come upon teachers who are in testing grades, oftentimes they are saying, in the words of Billy Joel, we didn't start the fire. Testing grade teachers are saying that students are coming to them below grade level, and it is really oftentimes what they believe an unrealistic expectation that they will be either grade level proficient or even more so college and career ready by the end of the school year. And then all the finger pointing ensues. Families are oftentimes blaming the education system for not adequately preparing their children for the next grade level or even college in the real world. And then conversely, we have colleges and the job force saying, hey, students aren't ready. High schools are saying KA education didn't have them ready. And then high schools are saying, hey, families, you didn't do what you needed to do before they got here. Question is who's right? Well, the problem is everybody's right. We know that oftentimes students are not leaving grades on grade levels, but then in the same token, as we can see by Meadow Lane Elementary's income and student readiness, only 52.8% of their students actually entered kindergarten on grade level. With proficiency to begin kindergarten. In addition, because we really have a lot of, in general, we are a high poverty state. Um, Economically disadvantaged students make up almost half of our student body populations. And so Meadow Lane is a little bit under the state average at 43.2%. However, we know that the research in education shows that students who are economically disadvantaged oftentimes have a lower academic outcomes. So, because everyone is right, we begin to pass the buck and we just, look to the next person to say that it's their fault. Now, as a parent, I have one perspective as to what my expectations are in my house and what my children will and will not have as it relates to education. However, as a public school employee, um, I can't worry. While I am concerned, I cannot worry about things that I cannot change. And so I really believe that once students walk through our doors, then we have to make it a point to say the buck stops here. And that time is in kindergarten when students first walk through our doors. And while it is not a legal requirement to attend kindergarten in North Carolina, most students do attend. And so that is our first chance to really make an impact and to begin to set that child up on a trajectory for not only grade level proficiency, but to be ready for the rest of their lives. Which brings us to Meadow Lane Elementary's kindergarten team. It is comprised of 5 teachers with a range of 9 to 27 years experience. Each classroom is self-contained in that the classroom teacher provides all core academic instruction, and on average, the classes have 18 students each. The principal of Meadow Lane has been in education for 31 years, and she has been a principal for 17 of those years. Of this project is mathematics. However, as teachers in North Carolina, the Meadow Lane kindergarten team is, of course, tasked with the responsibility of teaching the North Carolina Standard Course of Study in all content areas. To support instruction, North Carolina provides digital versions of the standards, unpacking documents, pacing guides. Now, Wayne County Public Schools typically develops pacing guides for each grade level and content area, but per a conversation with our district's math coordinator, kindergarten teachers in Wayne County are to use the state math pacing guide. Barriers to alignment for kindergarten math were evident early on. As a result of my inquiry with the district, principal, and teachers, I discovered that Meadow Lane's teachers and principal were unaware that of the state pacing guide, actually that it even existed or that it was required by the district. Prior to this, prior to finding this out, one teacher had already shared that she did not follow the pacing guide, or at least the one that she thought that she was supposed to be using. And another said that she was using a previous version of the district's guide because no updated pacing guide had been provided. According to an initial interview with the kindergarten grade level chair at Meadow Lane, Kinder Math is used as the primary curriculum resource for the entire grade level. It was purchased from Teacher Pay Teacher. It is aligned to Common Core. However, it doesn't follow the North Carolina sequencing or pacing, and there's no research or evidence of effectiveness. It promotes learning through facilitated learning and discourages teacher led instruction. According to the initial interview with the grade level chair, there was no secondary curriculum specifically. They kind of just pulled whatever they needed from the internet or wherever. However, when I followed up to ask about some ideas with what they actually were using as secondary resources, she stated that Kinder Math and Envision Math are the secondary resources. Of course, I was concerned since Kinder Math was previously named as a primary resource. So when I followed up with the principal to let her know, she said, that's why we need your help. And so I'm really hopeful that the findings of this audit will support improvements for math instruction at Meadow Lane. So here you can see some of the information about Envision Math. I did not analyze its structure as teachers only pull from it what they need when they need it. As we see, both the primary and secondary resources at Meadow Lane are aligned to Common Core standards, which were adopted by North Carolina in 2010. However, in 2017, the State Board of Education approved revisions. So here is the K2 major revisions at a glance document from DPI. And there are only two standards listed for kindergarten math. However, I opted to do a more thorough analysis of the NCDPI crosswalk for kindergarten math. Here are the findings of that analysis. I'm not going to read all of this to you. You can look at it as your leisure, hit pause. But I do want to mention two things. As indicated on the major revisions document, there is a brand new standard with no Common Core reference, which is NCKOA6. And it references conceptual subitizing. Also worth a mention is the change to KG4. Now, content-wise, there's no change. However, the new North Carolina standard only uses the word attribute. And by definition, that means the physical and mathematical characteristics of a shape. However, it was detailed. It talked about vertices and what have you, exactly what you were looking for. So this stood out to me only because it really is going to require teachers, or it really requires teachers to have a background knowledge to recognize what the actual expectation of the standard is. The next three slides is information gathered through interviews, observations, and analysis of instruction, assessment, and the environment. Math instruction at Meadow Lane typically lasts about 30 minutes, with about a third of the time equally divided among teacher led instruction, whole group guided practice, and independent practice. Now, two out of the five teachers did a better job at aligning instruction and practice as well as instruction and planning. But pacing for all the teachers was not aligned to whatever they stated their guide for pacing, scope, and sequence was. Not all of the time for any of them. So here's a listing of the informal formative assessments, formal assessments, and then summative assessments that I either observed, was told about, or read through planning documents. The one that I do want to mention is SchoolNet. I was really happy with what the school is doing. One, because it increases vertical alignment as they are working across grade levels to improve fractions. And then also with common formative assessments, they're able to also strengthen their horizontal alignment. Typically, when people hear environment, they think about the things that are listed to the right of the screen. And those are all very strong aspects of Meadow Lane's environment. However, when we also think about environment, particularly academic environment, we want to look at schedules. And so to make sure that we can have time to do what we say we're going to do. At Middle Lane, they do something that's called flight time, in which students are in core academic classes all day for 4 days a week. And then on one day a week, they have alternating assigned days that they go to their specials. This decreases instructional disruptions throughout the day, and it also allows for the grade level teachers to have extended planning time for PLCs, database problem solving, and so forth. For professional development, I just use a little thumbs up and thumbs down. There has been no professional development on the North Carolina Standard Course of Study. The primary or secondary materials, assessment training, teachers have had for SchoolNet, and then instruction. There has been ongoing district level PLCs, but it's only for a representative per grade level. So here are my recommendations for Middle Lane Elementary School's math, kindergarten math. All of my recommendations, in addition to current research, are really embedded in and aligned with the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction's Integrated Academic and Behavior Systems Division, which houses and supports public school districts with implementation of an MTSS. So, my first recommendation is that the school establish essential elements for core mathematics, which means that basically they are going to decide what the curriculum, instruction, and environment for Meadow Lane are. Regarding curriculum, I recommend that the school use the year at a glance pacing, motivational math materials, which are being used by one of the grade levels already, and is also the district recommendation for K6 math, I do believe. And then also to for the teachers to access and use tools for teachers NC, which also has the year at a glance pacing, lessons, and activities, all for mathematics. The best teachers are artists who know the science of teaching. And so, my recommendation for instruction is to adopt those instructional practices for the school that are required and that we know have a high effect size, which would be zero point 0.4 or greater. And some of those are listed here. And the ones that I've listed here are really the minimum that we should be requiring in schools in order to really say that we have effective practices. Next recommendation is for the academic environment for mathematics that the time be extended from the 30 minutes currently being used to 80 minutes. Now, DPI does recommend 60 minutes of math instruction for elementary students who are grade level proficient. However, almost 50% of the kindergartners coming into Meadow Lane are not. And so this time can also be used for students, the extra 20 minutes for extending and enhancing students who are already proficient or who have already mastered the content. He who fails to plan is planning to fail. Sir Winston Churchill. So, my second recommendation is around professional development and coaching. And the first thing that I think about when I think about PD is really a year long calendar. So after the school improvement team and the principal have assessed, what is it that we want here? What are the best practices that we need in place and that reflect the students in this building? Then the next thing you have to do is you have to go ahead and schedule, and my recommendation is that they schedule and identify resources and who can come in or who in the building can provide training for these things. And these are my recommendations over on the right. I won't read them all, but they are aligned to all of the data, the existing data, as well as my observations and interviews. My third recommendation is that the structure of that they really move to a more structured POC process with refined data practices. Here is very interesting that so my recommendations are one for it to use Dufour's essential questioning and the guiding information from Dufour in the POCs, as well as in multiple settings, whether we're talking about school improvement, POCs, IEP meetings, they really should be using a multi step database problem solving process. The irony here is that the people that are going, the representatives that are going to Supercore, the district level PLC, have received ongoing training on Dufour's essential questions and the format. And the school improvement team has received a day of training that was embedded into MTSS training on multi step database problem solving. And I know that because I'm the one that trained them. So, the irony here, and it's really not that much of an irony, is that neither is being implemented with any type of fidelity. It's kind of hit or miss. They're trying, but for some, not really, and it has not been supported. It hasn't been provided in the way that it really needs to be effective. So, as you saw earlier, one of my recommendations for training was that staff members receive training on how to coach other staff members. Here, my recommendation is that the staff members who have already received initial training in both Dufour's and database problem solving be coached. And so, in the paper, I recommended that the principal actually reach out to the district personnel that's able to provide that ongoing, continuous support so that they can actually start to go from just knowledge to practice. And so, my fourth and final recommendation, and it just would not be me if I did not drop the F bomb at least one time during this presentation, and that is fidelity. So, as expectations for teaching and learning are established, and staff receive training and ongoing coaching, implementation of these practices is a reasonable expectation of leadership. However, a system of checks and balances must be in place to ensure that we have fidelity, and that's for any organization, including schools. Therefore, my recommendation for Middle Lane is that they either develop or adopt instruction, curriculum, assessment, and environment walkthrough tools, and also a schedule of times that they'll actually
progress monitor implementation. And what that means is that we have a schedule to say that um, we are providing not only oversight but feedback as to how we are doing with um, implementing the best practices that we have decided on as a school. In conclusion, all recommendations in this presentation and in the paper regard systemic improvements for Meadow Lane Elementary Schools math instruction, curriculum, assessment, and environment. However, it can be generalized to all areas of Meadow Lane as well as any other school because we know that when we are not only looking at student outcome data, but first implementation data to ask how are the adults doing, and then we pair that and we look at effective innovations, meaning that we have high yield strategies and best practices in place. We have high levels of implementation with fidelity. Then that will equal significant outcomes for students. Thank you.
So, in conclusion, Meadow Lane is a great place to be. The recommendations in this presentation will help really, I think, to take Meadow Lane to its next forefront. And what we know is that implementation data is key. Everything recommended here is for systemic processes to be put in place. We have to say what are adults doing before we say what are students doing when we do not have the majority or a substantial majority, being 80% or more of our students, proficient at a minimum. We haven't even started talking about college and career ready, but at a minimum, proficient. And so, what do? We know that effective innovations, evidence based, highly effective practices, times effective implementation, meaning that we've done what we said we we're going to do, will equal significant outcomes. Thank you.